The real test of the pudding, of course, is the 10 demands and whether they'll be backed by all the politicians in Leinster House. I presume you'll have no problem.
Yes, and I think this is something that we should be debating in Dáil to follow up on this.
Look, there'll be widespread agreement on things like doors on fridges, but the real test is going to be the liquid fracked gas. Is that going to be a tough call for your party?
It will be, but we will be discussing it more and more. But they were very clear about it the last day. The young people, they were so informed as to right across the board on all major political issues. They were not afraid to address.
What's your personal? I mean, Fiona, your colleague. Fiona North Kildare.
And Fiona O'Loughlin.
Fiona O'Loughlin, sorry Fiona. But she was saying yesterday, her personal view is that we shouldn't be importing fracked gas, but she couldn't speak for the party. Your own view?
I'd be the same as Fiona on that. But we have to have that discussion with our parliamentary party where all members will be present at it. No one of us can make one decision on it.
I mean, the government is all Lord make me green, but not yet on this issue, aren't they, John Halligan?
Well, in fairness, they have identified 12 areas in the plan for 2040. Biodiversity, agriculture,
John, we're in 2019.
No, I know, but they have done that already. Don't forget that we have been able to get 500 million for the Celtic to do the electricity movement. We've taken peat off the grid over the last number of years. And by the way, there's another issue here that people don't talk about, that in Horizon 20...
For instance, fracked gas, that's one of the 10 demands. What's your position?
I think that the jury, to a degree, is out on fracking at present. You see the opinions they have, the variety of opinions they have in England and places like that. My own view is, it's only a personal view, I would disagree with the government on importing fracked gas. That's my view on it. That's my independent view.
What way will you vote?
Let's see how it's decided. Remember, I'm going to be quite blunt. I'm a minister in the government. I'm obliged to support the government, and I'll continue to do so. People may have a problem with that, but I have given a commitment to voting with the government as a minister, and I'll continue to do that.
I'm going to give the final word on this to Catherine Martin. No fracked gas, I presume that would be one of the Greens. If you're going into government after the next election, that's one of the minimum.
Is it any surprise that our students are taken to the streets and taken again to the streets on November 29th? How could the jury possibly be out on importing filthy fracked gas here? How could it be a discussion that any political party needs to have? We all know that 80% of known fossil fuels must stay in the ground. We as a country have banned fracked gas. Why on earth would we import that fossil fuel into our own country?
We have to leave it there for now, but we will be coming back to this. Thank you, all three of you, for joining us on the panel.
Now, I'm with Paul Keogh, David Cullinan, Fiona O'Loughlin, Tanya Ward and Dr. Cara Augustenberg. And Cara Augustenberg, I come to you because I think we were all generally really impressed with the Youth Parliament and the recommendations they came forward with yesterday on climate change. But I would say that some TDs will be saying, those pesky youngsters, how dare they expect us to recommend or to implement these recommendations? Do you think they will be implementing these recommendations?
That's a really good question. I think they did an incredible job. They prepared really hard for this, and I had the privilege of talking to some of them as part of their training for this. And there were 5 working groups that looked at the categories of energy, economics, farming, environment, and education, and they each proposed 2 recommendations. And what was really interesting about those recommendations is that they were very tangible. So we've seen a government that has recently been proposing a lot of issues around governance and policy, but not really tangible actions that reduce emissions. And what the Youth Assembly proposed would actually have an impact on emissions. So I think that's a huge lesson. And I would hope that every political party in their manifestos for the next election will address these 10 recommendations.
They're not. Can we be real for a second? They're not going to really implement number 2, ban the importation of fracked gas and invest solely in renewables. That's not going to happen,
if they're serious about climate action, banning imported fracked gas from the US is a key part of that. And we had in the Youth Assembly, we had the Doctors for the Environment in the United States imploring us to stop importing this gas that is destroying communities across America.
Well,
this is a global issue.
You be my guest, Cara Augustenberg. You go around to the politicians there, not me, and you try and get a guarantee that they'll ban fracked gas.
We
It's in
banned
the offing.
fracking. We banned fracking on the island of Ireland in 2017, and now we somehow think it makes sense to bring in imported frack gas from America. There's a huge disconnect there. So if we're serious about this, if we recognise the fracking has environmental impacts and has an impact on climate change, then we don't import it either, and we don't need it. We can get off gas in the next 15 years.
On behalf of the youth of Ireland, let's work together, and the politicians on the panel here. You turn to Fiona O'Loughlin there first, and Fiona, on behalf of Fianna Fáil, you tell the young people of Ireland that you, on behalf of your party, will not import, if you're in government, any fracked gas.
I'm not a spokesperson in this area, I'm not an expert in this area, but I felt that the young people made a very valid argument, and I certainly on a personal level would support that. I think that...
Does the party have a position on it?
But the recommendations the 10 recommendations that they made, I thought a lot of them were very, very practical. Even listening last night to the Late Late Show and listening even to the one in relation to the doors on fridges, I thought, that is so sensible, that is so practical. Something that I took away from listening as well was that the young people there yesterday really made their day in Leinster House count. And it made me, to be honest, recommit myself that I need to make every day count.
They don't want honeysuckle words from you or anybody else. They want commitments from you as a party.
They don't want lip service.
If you can say to me, I can't give you a guarantee on behalf of our party because we don't have a position on it, that's fair enough. Is that what you're saying? On fracked gas and importation, are you saying I don't know what the Fianna Fáil position is?
No, I'm not saying that.
So what is it?
But things evolve, right? And I'm saying that at this point in time, I feel that we should not be bringing in fracked gas,
well,
and that's
you,
as
and
far as I can
fully
go
respect,
with that.
But
then you should leave your party if they support it.
So okay, let's David Cullinan, can you give me Sinn Féin's position on number 4? Young people of Ireland, wait till you hear this guarantee from David Cullinan. The recommendation is to implement a tiered tax on emissions from large companies, including those under capital emissions trading scheme.
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of the recommendations, and I want to first of all welcome the recommendations. I think, yes, they're quite radical, but they're also necessary if we're serious about climate action. We agree, and we've said for some time, that the burden has to be shifted from householders and put onto the big polluters and corporations. And obviously revenue and taxes is one way to do that. Also looking at carbon credits, which I think is a nonsense in the current situation as well, where we have to make sure that big corporations reduce their carbon emissions. I also want to make the point about the fracked gas situation, because Fianna Fáil did not support that at the Oireachtas Committee on Communications. We had full hearings on the issue. Fianna Fáil were not in a position to say that they would oppose the importation of fracked gas. We did. We were very, very clear. I'm speaking from the Sinn Féin Ardesh here in Derry. We have Ard Corla motions which very clearly set out that we will not just ban fracked gas in the south, but also in the north. It will be a clear part of any negotiation of a government in the north, and also ban the importation of fracked gas. And can I just say on that issue, Cormac, very quickly, the Oireachtas Committee, in the same way that the young people did when they listened to the experts, we had scientists, leading scientists in this state and leading climate change experts in this state, from universities, from institutes of technology, come before us, all saying that importing fracked gas is bad. And there is no point locking the next generation and locking any part of the country in terms of jobs into something which is of a...
I think it's well accepted, based on our decision to date, that we don't like fracked gas. We've banned it with pretty much unanimous support here, so we recognise there's a problem with fracked gas. I think from a climate change perspective, we recognise that the emissions from fossil fuels is problematic and is causing a very significant change in our climate, and it's something which we need to address, and there are targets there. And I'm taken to some extent by what Professor Mullen has said, or Mac Mullen. He'd like us to go further than what we've already signed up to, or maybe to meet the targets that we've signed up to, he'd like us to go further than what the government have already done. And I think we'll absolutely have to look at that. And we have to understand, and we have to be satisfied that we're going to have the appropriate level of an energy mix, not just gas, but right across the piece, to get us, even if we stick to the current trajectory that we're on in terms of emissions reduction to 2050, net zero by 2050. how does that fit in the overall mix of energies that we're using, the overall importation of gas from the interconnectors that are already there? And do we really need, the question we have to answer, do we really need an LNG terminal on the west coast of Ireland, whether it be fracked gas or non-fracked gas or whatever? Do we need that from that point of view? So that's a piece of work that I think has to be done, and I think the department could well advise us on that, and I'd be suggesting that it be done in an independent way, expertise. But it's clear if you were starting today, you certainly wouldn't be putting an LNG facility in that location, or you wouldn't be maybe looking at fracked gas at all. But the old story, we're not starting from today. There's, a company that's already there, that has invested significant amounts of money, has certain permissions, and we've got to address that too. And we've got to look at if that makes sense to continue with that from a point of view of energy security. And that's really where I think it all ultimately comes down to, the energy security piece.
In relation to fracking, Fianna Fáil has been clear in our opposition to hydraulic fracking in Ireland as far back as 2015. We strongly supported the 2017 legislation to introduce a national ban on onshore fracking in recognition of the health and climate impacts of exploiting shale gas reserves. We also note that this legislation also has implications for the taking and storage of fracked gas, and this is a further issue which the government must closely consider in the context of LNG. We also note, as part of the recent advice to the Taoiseach from the Climate Change Advisory Council on the subject of fossil fuel exploration, the Council advised that there are proposals to develop significant LNG storage capacity in Ireland. This would address some energy security concerns with regard to current reliance on a limited supply chain. However, issues with respect to the embedded greenhouse gas emissions associated with the production, compression, distribution and storage of natural gas sourced from a more diverse range of regions and production techniques would need to be addressed. On the basis of this advice, the Government should undertake a strategic environmental assessment and emissions analysis of the possible importation of fracked gas. To conclude, as I've stated many times in this House, and my party has stated, the need and the mandate for greater climate action is clearer and stronger than ever. Climate impacts are a major security concern. Any of the doubters need only look around us, look at the window outside in about 2 hours' time when Storm Lorenzo hits, hot on the heels of Storm Emma, Storm Ophelia and every other climate emergency or climate freak weather episode we've witnessed in recent years. The Government should only progress with the designation of EU projects of common interest when a proper assessment of all projects has been carried out. It is also suggested the Joint Oireachtas Committee on Climate Action must examine the risks further.